I'm Anita Huberman. I'm President and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. We're Surrey's city building business organization. We're one of the top 10 largest chambers of commerce, boards of trades in the country. There's 450 of us, and our mandate, as it is with every chamber board of trade in their respective area, is to support business and bring business into their area. And I want you to know that we're here instigating change at the different levels of government. Surrey is going to be the largest city in British Columbia very soon. And we're so pleased that we can have this open dialogue with our members of parliament based right here in Surrey. And I'll have them introduce themselves very shortly. So before we begin, though, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the land, on the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsawwassen First Nations and the unceded territory of our Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Paitsy, Coquitlam, Kaikut, and Semiahmoo First Nations. I'd also like to acknowledge the Inuit and Métis peoples. They all have a profound connection to the land and waters that surround Surrey. They are a major economic development partner in Surrey. So with that, let's begin. I know that this is going to be an open dialogue, a very unique opportunity for those of you to engage with our MPs here in Surrey. The federal budget is coming up, and we did formally submit a federal budget submission last week, and we also spoke to the Associate Finance Minister through Zoom technology, of course, just to indicate our priorities. So just before we begin, I just wanted to highlight those, and then I'll have the MPs introduce themselves, some short remarks, and then we'll get right into the dialogue and the questions. And each of you, I'll call on each of you to ask your question. And if we have time, I'll go through the Zoom room again. So get your questions and your comments ready. Make sure that they're respectful. You know, we're all here to work together to ensure Canada is a destination for business, and to ensure that we are implementing policies that support our businesses of all sizes. So I just wanted to share this with you. Hopefully you can see it. I know the font is a little bit small, but we do have a 10-point economic plan that we issued to the federal government in light of hopefully going beyond the pandemic. And so what we want to see out of this federal budget and in an ongoing way is a focus, number one, on healthcare. This won't be the last pandemic or disaster that we face. We need to manage the virus. We need to focus on our healthcare systems, either through technology, workforce development, and also business attraction from international destinations, co-location opportunities. Number two is education. Our workforce portfolio at the Surrey Board of Trade has only been growing because of the labor shortages, skills shortages that businesses are facing and eroding on the bottom line of businesses. The reskilling and upskilling must continue to be a priority. Number three is around the focus on international trade and supply chains. One of the pieces, I just got off a call, an event with India, and we really want there to be more free trade agreements, a Canada free trade agreement that will embolden Canada's opportunity on the international stage. We need to ensure that our supply chains locally are protected as well, and to implement those revenue generating strategies and innovative strategies to create jobs and sustain jobs around our various supply chains within Canada. Number 4 is around stimulus. Stimulus needs to work around green energy, energy efficiency, for example, accelerating government digitization, offering companies incentives to adopt new technologies. We are in the digital age, and certainly digitization of businesses means a variety of different things, whether you're a small business or a large business. Number 5 is government efficiency. Deliver contactless government. As I mentioned, around digital transformation needs to continue to be a priority. Number 6 is around financial accountability. We have been calling on the federal government to have a comprehensive tax reform to ensure that the bottom line of businesses doesn't continue to be eroded. That's the number one piece that we hear around taxation and regulation around different levels of government. So we need to manage our balance sheets with an investor mindset. And there's some options there that are presented. Number 7, preparing for the next crisis now. We need to, if we have an earthquake here in the Lower Mainland, how are we going to ensure support for our businesses? What are the investments around floods, fires? Climate change is here. Number 8, using data to drive decision-making, to ensure that every single person matters in our job market, whether you're a person with disabilities, those that are homeless. Homelessness, should not be happening in Canada. And there are ways to implement infrastructure to ensure better outcomes, ensure livability of all of our citizens, and productivity within the economy. Number 9, government employees, smarter way to work. Cultivate more productive ways for the public sector to work. And that, may enhance some efficiencies and save the Canadian government some money. And number 10, government, that they set the guidelines around legislation, but it is, we believe, the private sector that needs to drive the economy, drive jobs, drive innovation. And so the partnerships with the private sector must be ongoing. Again, to create equal opportunities for that small business and also for that large business. So to our fellow MPs, I just wanted to share that with you, just to set the foundation of our discussion. And so now let me introduce our MPs, each in turn will introduce themselves with some opening remarks, very brief, everyone, and then we'll go into discussion. So Randeep Sarai, you're first.
Thank you, Anita. It's always a pleasure to be on the Surrey Board of Trade roundtables. Hopefully we'll be able to do them in person again very shortly. I'm Randy Sarai, a Member of Parliament for Surrey Centre. In terms of my parliamentary duties, I'm the chair of the Justice Committee and I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And formerly I was along with Suk Dhaliwal on the International Trade Committee. And so I've also served on the Immigration Committee for about 4 years. So it gives you a little background of what I am. And my goal is to make Surrey the best place to live, learn, work, and play. And I've strived to do that and bring as many government services and to Surrey, and also get Surrey its fair share of federal funding, federal services, and federal benefits. And I also want to bring the voice of Surrey back to Ottawa, so that those in Ottawa know the needs of Surrey, because the needs of Surrey are the needs of Canada. That's it for me.
And let's not forget the new head office, right, based in Surrey City Centre of the new Western Economic Diversification Office, Pacific Can.
Yes.
Yes, so very exciting.
We're very excited. We've had a good run in the last 6 years for Surrey. We've got a Veterans Affairs Center. We've got the Pacific Can Regional Development Agency with a $500 million budget. We've got SFU, Surrey Sustainable Energy Environmental Engineering Building. We've got the new Forensic Lab, which is Canada's largest forensic lab and the most state-of-the-art in green timbers. So Surrey's done well, and obviously looking forward to the other transit priorities with SkyTrain heading out, extending all the way out to Langley. So these are all important infrastructure projects that'll benefit Surrey. And we're hoping to get a Surrey hub as well to get federal government services right in the core of downtown Surrey, and hopefully working on a little bit more progress on that in this summer.
Okay, thank you so much, Randeep. Ken Hardy.
Well, thank you. I'm Ken Hardy, and it's good to see everybody. Well, I see a lot of names, but I'm sure pictures will pop up in due course. And good morning to you, Anita. Always good to see you and be involved in this. As the Member of Parliament for Fleetwood Port Kells, of course, we've been looking after, quite a diverse sort of microeconomy here. We have a very robust agricultural sector, but up in Port Kells, we also have, light industry and things that are important not only to, Canada's domestic economy, but our foreign trade, etc. And I wanted to, in addition to all of the progress that the federal government has been able to sponsor, to stimulate, things like the Canada Child Benefit were huge in keeping our local economy in much, much better shape through the pandemic. And that, of course, was on top of all of the pandemic related supports. Fleetwood Business Improvement Association can tell you that coming out of the pandemic, which we hope we are, we have over 30 more businesses along the Fleetwood corridor than we did before the pandemic. So, in many respects, we've managed to sustain and even grow the economic footprint. That said, though, there are transitions. There are transitions as people move into different kinds of work. Work is being done differently. I want to just give you 4 things to think about as we go forward. Even the world events today show how fragile sovereignty can be. What do we do about that? And how can business particularly contribute to Canada's sovereignty? Housing, we're going to be probably announcing that we're going to be accepting Ukrainian refugees as we have Afghan refugees, as we're looking at immigration, obviously, to bolster our economy. Okay, but housing is one of the biggest stumbling blocks. And how can business help there? And how can business and the levels of government work together to do a much, much better job? Economic growth. We can balance the budget through growing the economy. Yes, budgets can balance themselves, in fact. But what that means is that government has to share somewhat in the economic growth that we help to stimulate. So how does that happen? A good question. And finally, I want to talk about tax expenditures, because I have no doubt that we'll be, obviously challenged to reduce taxes and regulations. This is pretty common from the Board of Trade, and it's what we would expect you to talk to us about. But how do those tax expenditures particularly equate to growth and development? Because over the history of the past 30 to 40 years, a lot of tax expenditures in various levels of government have led to a massive exodus of business and work to other countries. So what can we do if the government makes that kind of investment to ensure that the benefits actually stay here at home? So those are all things that I think we can think about going forward.
Thank you, Ken. Suk Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Anita. Anita, always wonderful to have a roundtable with the Surrey Board of Trade, and I want to congratulate you upon your leadership. Always accessible. Before I got in politics, I'm a professional engineer by trade and BC land surveyor. Been involved in the community almost over 2 decades, whether it's as a elected representative, 5-time member of parliament, or as a citizen of Surrey. And Surrey has been my home. It's been home to my family, my business, and to my elderly parents. Beside what Randeep and Ken Hardy covered, Anita, anytime a city has, or university, whether it's KPU in my constituency or SFU, I know they went to the federal government. We have always delivered. Beside the projects, Randeep, you mentioned, we also put money into into KPU and John Aldeg's writing at the Heritage Museum. John, I'm sure you're very proud of that. And then the bridge on the South Surrey and that wooden bridge. So all those infrastructure projects that came forward, smaller to the biggest, we delivered. On the other hand, you talked about, Randeep mentioned, I'm on the Citizenship Immigration Committee, and I'm also chairing the Special Committee on Afghanistan. Before we were on the International Trade Committee on International Trade. As you said, it's key to the Surrey Board of Trade. I can tell you whether it was signing Kuzma or CETA or trade with Ukraine, our government has always been upfront and been a government open to free trade. Sitting on the Citizenship Immigration Committee, the issue with worker shortage, I'm sure all four of us sitting here, and I'm sure the other MPs, they get the same. Every day we are hearing that there is shortage of workers, whether it's cooks, whether it's in the construction, whether it's in the logistics industry, and we are on that file. And as an immigration committee, we are studying that as well. Moving forward, we work together as a team. All four of us, John, myself, Randeep, and Ken, whatever we could deliver to the citizens of Surrey, we stand together as a team, and we will continue to. And thank you to all the participants, because the input from the grassroots is very, very key and important, so as we can take your voice to Ottawa.
Thank you so much, Suk. John Aldeg.
Well, good morning, everyone. And Anita, it's always good to see you. Congratulations on, I think it was your 29th anniversary recently with the Surrey Board of Trade, which is a huge milestone. And I think it shows your commitment to this community. Thank you to the Surrey Board of Trade for hosting this dialogue this morning. I am John Aldeg, the Member of Parliament for Cloverdale, Langley City. And I had had a brief break in the 43rd Parliament back now, and getting up to speed on what the issues of the community are in Cloverdale, Langley City, so that, like my colleagues, we can take those the issues of Surrey back to Ottawa to represent our community. In the previous 42nd Parliament, when I was the member, I had sat on the Environment and Sustainable Development Committee. This go around, I'm chairing the Natural Resources Committee. And I think that it's, the work that we do as representatives in Surrey really helps bring the perspectives of our community to the government policies and directions. Since I started in politics, the top issue that I've heard from my constituents are issues of affordability, particularly housing. And I think that remains a very top priority for our government. And we're going to see even more focus on that. I was speaking recently with a developer who projects that throughout the metro region, we have to build more than the equivalent of the city of Chilliwack every year to meet the housing demand. And so I think we need to look at what mix of housing we need to bring into our community, and how we make that affordable so that our residents can live and work at home. Climate change is huge. We continue to see British Columbia lead, and there are many businesses within the community of Surrey who are involved in finding solutions to climate change. We'd like to see that innovation continue. Things, very important items like reconciliation with our Indigenous communities. I appreciate the land acknowledgement that you did at the beginning, Anita. I think it demonstrates that we've done a lot of work, but there's a lot more work to do with our First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. We need to get out of the pandemic and get the economy really thriving again. We've recovered jobs. We are seeing things starting to go again, and we need to be prepared for a boom. So I look forward to the discussion today, and I appreciate you sharing the priorities that you've submitted to the minister as part of the budget consultations. But as we hear the issues that the Surrey Board of Trade and its members have, we can reiterate those, emphasize them, and make sure that we are meeting your needs as a federal government here in our growing and wonderful city of Surrey. Thank you, and let's get started.
So I know Carrie Lynn Finley is going to join us as soon as she does. So we will just interrupt the dialogue and have her introduce herself. So I'm going to pose the first question. And to our MPs, if you would like to respond to any of the questions, just raise your hand and I will recognize you to respond in turn. Is that fair? Very good. All right, so my first question is around the salmon farming industry. The Lower Mainland and more specifically Surrey has hundreds of businesses which serve Vancouver Island salmon farms. It really is about, in addition to that, an Indigenous reconciliation activity to ensure that these salmon farms continue to exist. We know the federal government's decision to end net pen salmon farming has already led to the closure of a fish processing business right here in Surrey. 80 jobs are gone. How does the federal government plan to support the businesses and local jobs which depend on salmon farming? Is there any move to delay the decision to close those salmon farms on the Discovery Islands, part of British Columbia? Who would like to respond to that? Ken.
Well, thank you, Anita. As a member of the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans, of course, we've been very much engaged in this. I don't want to underestimate the damage to our wild fish stocks that have been done by the open net operations, which is why, prior to the 2019 election, in fact, we made it very, very clear that we wanted to see that kind of operation be phased out. Regrettably, I think the salmon farming industry has dragged its feet, hoping that something would change and they would be allowed to continue, but that hasn't happened for them. So we find them caught a little bit flat-footed by steps to, for instance, close the operations in the Discovery Islands. Now, where do we go from here? Well, I mean, obviously, the impact on some local Surrey businesses has been quite significant, and we understand that. At the same time, there are other activities going on right now, particularly to do with the labeling and traceability of fish products, with a lot of focus on the difficulties in dealing with the products that are coming into Canada from other places. I think our domestic processing industry has been hollowed out a little bit. Jim Pattison Industries had closed the biggest fish plant in British Columbia in Prince Rupert and moved it to Alaska. But there is opportunities, there will be opportunities increasing for fish processing operations to pick up new business as we kind of repatriate some of that work that currently has been going offshore. But make no mistake, the aquaculture industry is going to have to come up with a new model for its operations. That may include simply moving to places that don't affect salmon runs, and that's certainly an opportunity there, but also to work with our Indigenous communities, because reconciliation and all of that is part of it. So you can see in the $647 million investment that we've made in the last year's budget to helping to preserve wild salmon stocks, that'll also be folded into a way to sustain the fish farming industry, but in a way that is not damaging to the natural resource that we have.
Any others want to respond to that? Any other MPs? John?
Yeah, thanks, Anita. Just building on what Ken had said, when I was in the 42nd Parliament, the Environment and Sustainable Development Committee had also looked at this issue. And we have to recognize that our salmon stocks, our fish stocks in the West Coast continue to be in peril. And we need to look at everything we can do to protect them. There are, I think, great opportunities here for innovation. We have had looked at some inland salmon farming operations, and there is viability there. There's going to be innovation in technology and the methods of farming that are needed. But I think that businesses like in Surrey could be a key part of cracking that nut and figuring out how we can farm sustainably without impacting the wild fish populations. So whether it's inland, whether it's other technologies with closed net pens or other things, but we can't continue to, it's like polluting the air. There has to be a cost to these actions. And that's what we're looking at, how we actually protect the wild stocks and but move to a new form of a sustainable business. And I think that's a challenge that our business community has as we move away from what has been the long-term status quo for an industry that really hasn't changed in many ways.
Let's move on to a next topic. If you don't, if I call your name and you don't have a question or a comment, just say pass. So Aman from EWAS.
Pass.
Okay. Leonard Handoko.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Leonard. My background is in international business development, and we are in the distribution business. So I'm not sure to whom I should address these questions, but let me tell you a little bit about my story. So
You can, Leonard, just ask your question because we need to keep moving. So just keep it succinct, please.
Okay, my question is there any support for small business, which is in international sector, but it is not a producer. It's kind of self-employed, because I'm sure that there are many unemployment today. If we can help a small business person like me to access the market overseas, so to get the market in overseas. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Sure, that's a great question. Look, in terms of COVID supports, those were regional. In anyone that had revenues drop by 30% or more, I think we're eligible for those. There's $60,000, of which 20,000 was forgivable in terms of loans. Those have already been out there, and I'm sure you're aware of those. Surrey Board of Trade did a good job in sharing that, I think, with their membership. However, and when it comes to export and export opportunities, my best suggestion is go to Export Development Canada, EDC. EDC gives you really good guidance, and there's a lot of support networks. The second you can go to your member of parliament, any one of us that is here, we can help you access, and EDC can do this as well, with the trade commissioners that are Canadian trade representatives abroad. So a lot of times you're a small business, you wanted to go do business, say in Indonesia, or you want to do it in Thailand or Vietnam for that matter, and getting access or finding out who to deal with and how banks and other things structure deals there. Our trade commissioners that are in every one of these regions, we can access them. They will do a lot of the work for you. So prior to even arriving to that destination, you'll have an ambassador helping you out, assisting you in those. EDC also insures exports if it's an export opportunity that you're doing, where you can pay a fee in your exports in case the buyer does not pay for those. You are insured in those, and those are based on rates are based on the state that they're dealing with. So I think on a broad base, those are the supports. Just to let you know, we have free trade agreements with the European Union now. We have free trade agreements with Asia, with the CPTPP. We have a North American free trade agreement, and many with South American countries as well. So we have access to almost 2 billion people around the world where you can get free trade access, and you can get those opportunities from EDC and to some degree from BDC as well. Business Development Bank can assist you and guide you in those as well. They have a whole array of tools, from helping you build your business plan to getting a website and web presence, to accessing these different financial tools, as well as global ambassadors such as these trade commissioners.
Thank you, Randy. Carrie Lynn Finlay has joined us. Carrie Lynn, if you want to just really briefly introduce yourself. Can't hear you.
Hi, sorry, hitting the wrong buttons as usual. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm joining you late, but happy to be here with you all. The Surrey business community and Surrey Board of Trade. I am the Member of Parliament for South Surrey White Rock, and I'm the only Surrey Member of Parliament not in the governing Liberal Party. So I'm in the official opposition as a Conservative. I'm a former cabinet minister, and now I am the Shadow Minister for National Defense. And as you can imagine, with the invasion of Ukraine, we've been very busy on that subject. So with that, I'm looking forward to joining in and hearing what my colleagues have to say, all of whom I've worked with and have, I think, a good collegial relationship with. So thank you.
So Carrie Lynn, if you would like to respond to a question that is posed, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you in turn as we go through everyone. So the next person, Bilal Chima, and then Sharon. Sethi, you're next. Remember, one sentence question so we can get through everyone. Bilal, do you have a question?
A very quick one. Thank you so much, Anita. Surrey, fastest growing community for many, many years. So many people coming to Surrey, making it their home. We want to increase the business opportunities. At the same time, people need a place to stay. What can we do? Are we doing enough on providing housing? If not, what else can we do? Or what else can the federal government do to support affordable housing here in Surrey? Thank you.
Who would like to respond? Suk? Suk, we can't hear you.
Here we go. Thank you, Bilal. Great question. When it comes to affordable housing, there's going to be a deficit. If we look at in Surrey, 1,500 people moving every month, so it needs around 500 permits per month. So it comes to 6,000 permits just for the people that are moving in, but there are also internally people are building, and I don't think city is issuing that many permits. To bring in affordability, we have to meet the demand. So if there is not enough supply, we cannot bring affordability. To help the cities on that particular front, we are bringing in an accelerated fund that will help cities to hire more inspectors, more plan checkers, more planners. So we are able to escalate the permit process and build more units. On the other hand, when it comes to but there were 2 stages of rapid housing projects that we brought in, and Surrey was able to access both times, and we were able to put that into place. That's a bit of a thing, and I'm sure Ken's hand is up, so I'm not going to take any more time. Ken, go ahead.
Ken, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. We met actually with the Urban Caucus Mayors or the Urban Mayors Caucus just the other day, and they were very complimentary of the Rapid Housing Initiative, which has really worked well in Surrey to open up existing locations to housing units. With a bit of renovation, places for people to live, particularly low-income people. We also really do need to at least think about what our options are to look at the things that are distorting the market. So that would include flipping. It would include some of the real estate practices that tend to drive up prices, with blind bidding, et cetera, et cetera. And these are all things that the federal government are prepared to move on. We watch with interest what the province has announced in the recent budget, where they will be taking at least some of the decision-making authority to themselves from municipalities. So it'd be interesting to see how that works, because there are many aspects there that, obviously need to be at least considered. We're hemmed in by the mountains, the ocean, the American border, and the agricultural land reserves. So the land that we've got, we have to use as efficiently and as wisely as possible.
Okay, Randeep, and then Carrie Lynn, short responses, please.
Sure. Just adding to my colleagues, there's been a big gap in rental construction and rental housing since the 60s, not even the 70s. There hasn't been any significant new residential construction. All the apartments we see in Surrey, they're predominantly 40, 50, 60 years old. Other than a few builders that have used some pension funds, there has been no significant new rentals, and those have been in a high luxury market. So what we've introduced after our national housing strategy is a affordable rental construction financing initiative. It's $25 billion. It was 13 before, another 12 billion was added. It is very sought after. In fact, it's oversubscribed. The Lower Mainland has so far actually has disproportionately got more funding. So British Columbia's got actually more funding nationally than anywhere else. And in Surrey, if you look right across the street from my office, Boza is now one of those recipients, and they're building, I think, 300 plus units of affordable. So these have to be on average 10% below market. So some of them would be market, some of them would be significantly subsidized. And in the last year, I've seen thousands of units actually been announced and starting construction in the Lower Mainland. Obviously, with these high rises, they take about 3 to 4 years to build. But this is one way that the federal government is able to inject an incentive by giving lots of capital, longer amortization rates, and longer terms at a very low rate to incentivize developers to build more rental housing, easing the burden on some of the other housing needs in the neighborhood. So just wanted to add that.
Carrie Lynn?
Thank you. I'll be quick. We all know affordability is a huge problem for most people living in the Lower Mainland. And Surrey is growing like crazy. We all know that. We like that because we know that we are gaining in prominence in the country and even internationally, but it causes a lot of grief. And I'm sure everyone here would agree that it continues to be a huge issue, particularly at election time. The program that the federal Liberal government put in to incentivize first home buyers did not work. There was very little take up on it because it meant that the federal government would be a co-owner of the housing. So that at the end of the day, so that didn't work well. But instead of looking to something new, they've been limited in what they've done. This is an integrated issue with we have across the board in Canada, housing prices are up 28%. That's even bigger in certain pockets like here, Toronto, even Ottawa, the percentages are much higher. Also, we've got inflation at a 30-year high. So it's not just about the price of the housing, it's the robustness of the economy. Is it strong enough? Are people working? Do they have good paychecks? Can they qualify for those mortgages? There's just a lot more involved. And this is where the federal government must work with provincial governments and even municipalities to try and get better integration, in my view, when it comes to housing affordability. I agree we need more rental housing. But we also just need more housing. We need variety in housing. There's no such thing as kind of a starter home in this part of our world. And yet in other communities, there are those smaller homes where people can be a homeowner, but not necessarily in a great big home. So we need more variety. There's a lot of tension with land availability and land being given over to industrial instead of housing. That needs to be looked at. And one of our suggestions in the last election was that we would free up 15% of the federal land. The federal government is the largest landowner in Canada. And there are places there that we can free up land to make it available for housing that right now it's frozen. Thanks.
Sharon Sethi, short question.
Yes, I do. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this conversation. Housing is a very important issue and it continues to be talked about. Yet here are some challenges that we face as developers. As you know, we've been developing in Wally for about 16 years. So the challenges are skilled workers, continuous amount of taxes being burdened on the developers, step code. Yes, there's an environmental concern, but step code goes way overbound to what it is. It has actually increased our construction costs as much as 18%. The process was not thought about enough. It was talked about it, but it rammed through it. So the development community are facing these challenges. And so I repeat again, skilled workers, amount of taxes keep on we having to pay each project we do, and the step code. And I'll leave it like that.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through more people. MPs, if you can just take notes, and then I'll get to you for your responses. So next is Cynthia Lee, and then David Van Coolen. Cynthia, do you have anything to say?
I will pass. Thank you.
Okay, David Van Coolen. David? Okay, Doug Tennant.
Thank you, Anita. And thank you, the MPs, for talking about the desperate need for housing. The city's own housing needs report points out there's an immediate need for 15,000 below market homes and another 20,000 in the next 10 years. And yet, in the Darts Hill Community Housing Plan, there's not one single mention of affordable housing. So my question is to the MPs is what can you do to support and perhaps educate municipalities that don't understand or buy into the fact that there is a housing crisis? And also, how can you specifically help nonprofit housing providers? Randeep, the affordable rental program is very good, but it was very difficult for us as a nonprofit to interface with it. It really works well for private developers, but the affordable housing that's created then is only good for 20 years, as opposed to nonprofits that create affordable housing in perpetuity. So my question is, what can you do to pressure municipalities that don't believe that there is a crisis? And secondly, what can you do to help nonprofits trying to build housing? Thank you.
Eric Peterson, and then Gupta and Associates.
No, thanks, I'm good.
Okay, Gupta and Associates.
So yeah, okay, so affordable housing means like everybody should be have a house at least after coming to Canada, especially the immigrants, right, after 4 or 5 years. But we are saying that there is a lot of kind of a discrepancy. One person is holding 7, 8 houses, and the other one is holding not just one house. Right, that is not affordable. Even a townhome is have been sold for 1.5, 1.3 million dollars. Right, so there are a lot of loopholes in there. For example, getting the mortgage. Right, one of my mortgage broker friends was telling me that to qualify for $1 million, you had to have at least $200,000 of income without any other mortgage. Right. So, but still people are getting the mortgages. There are a lot of loopholes in getting the mortgages. And also there are a lot of flipping and all this stuff going on, right? That is the only, if we can control that thing, the prices will come down and automatically it will become affordable. The second thing obviously is the supply thing, right? So immigration is needed in the country, but immigration, I don't know how the policies are made. But we should be taking care of those people who are coming to Canada, and how can they get a house sooner than later. And also they should not be concentrating at one place. The new immigrants should be, the government should make a policy where they should be able to scatter all around Canada, not just to one place like Surrey or just Vancouver or Brampton like this, right? So that's what I was suggesting. We should be having both ways, like immigration policy as well as plugging the loopholes that are there in the system.
Jocelyn Young, and then Ken Bell. Jocelyn, do you have anything to say? Ken Bell.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to compliment all our MPs on the great job they're doing. It's tough being an MP, so I'm here largely to support you. And I have a question about, are there any plans for supports to industry to help with digitization?
Kyle Latchford, and then Martina Rossini. Kyle Latchford, anything to say? Martina Rossini. Pavan Ojla. Anything to say?
Yes, I have a question. And this is regarding ALR properties that are located in heavily residential areas. I know that with ALR properties, they're very, they're difficult, well, they're challenging to rezone to commercial or for residential. And, you know, these heavily residential areas that complain about noise and sound quality, is there any way that we can expedite rezoning those type of properties that are in those type of areas?
Ramona, and then Rick, and then Stephanie. Ramona, anything to say?
Yes, thank you very much, Anita. I'm tagging on to Doug Tennant's comments and his question at Unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rick, man. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. I think my my internet was cutting out there. Just on the heels of what Doug was saying, you know, I've kind of noticed there's, you know, forget about the private benefit. There's a few projects out there, non-profit kind of spirited by those type of organizations that get widespread community support, but maybe turned down at a municipal level due to the private benefit of one or some citizens. Just wondering what kind of recourse in the future could these types of organizations look for from government support?
Stephanie, and then Tony.
Hi, I have a question for Randeep Sarai. Randeep, you are essentially my MP, and you know, I have some concerns around, you know, the jobs that we're holding 100 jobs supporting the salmon farmers, and we have about 100 other jobs from our suppliers who also support our business. I hate to say this, but from what I hear about what Ken Hardy and John Aldag said, there seems to be a willingness to sacrifice these 200 jobs that we have under your jurisdiction. And I think it's really important that the Liberal government thinks about the science. Department of Fishery and Oceans has already done tests that lasted about 10 years that says salmon farming does not impact wild salmon. Us as feed millers, we do not just serve the salmon farmers, we also sell to the DFO and for enhancement. So we're very balanced in how we look at you know, food security. So Randeep Sarai, really curious about how you think about the 200 jobs that my business and my suppliers could be impacted in your area.
Tony Sandu, you're the final question.
Thank you, Anita and everybody. I just a quick note on affordable housing. We actually are working with one of our bigger developers and builders out in North Van, where they're doing a rent-to-own program for affordable housing, where they'll set prices and keep them for 2 years like that, but have a contract with people so they can actually afford these homes and rent them and then use the rent as a down payment. We also work with the city of North Vancouver and the developer to work on this project and BC Housing. And we're just wondering if the city of Surrey will be open to anything like that.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And now we'll go to responses by our MPs. So we'll begin first of all with Ken Hardy and then to Carrie Lynn. So Ken, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm going to just go down through some of the list of the speakers that you had. To Doug and to, I hope it's Gupta, I hope that is your names, or Gupta and Associates. One of the issues, and it came up last night in a meeting that we had with the Surrey School Board, and that is that nonprofits or school boards, etc., look for land to build something, but they're continuously being kind of outmaneuvered by the developers. And that's going to be a continuing issue. Is that me echoing like that, or is it somebody else? Okay, I think that hopefully that's gone away. Okay, good. You know, so we need to look at all of the things that are putting pressure on prices. You you know, the access to mortgages that came up from Gupta and Associates. You know, we hear that people will have a house. You know, the value of that house increases because of what's going on in the market, and they use that to leverage another mortgage that they can then buy another house, and then another one, and then another one, and so on. I think Singapore is a jurisdiction where they limit the number of houses that somebody can own. And I wonder if that's the sort of thing that we can think of in terms of regulation. To Pavan, getting stuff out of the ALR, that's specifically a provincial issue, and you would need to talk to them about that. To Stephanie, I know that your question was to Randeep Sarai, but I can tell you that, in fact, the salmon farming has had an enormously harmful effect on our wild salmon populations. There was some work done by the DFO a year and a half ago, but as soon as it came out, it was seen to be very poor research that really omitted the analysis of many different factors. So in fact, yes, the impact on wild salmon runs of fish farms is terrible. And that's one of the reasons why the minister at the time you know, responded by closing the Discovery Island fish operations. There are different ways of doing fish farming, aquaculture, and it is something that we're going to be bearing down on. But the industry itself has some obligations to do what they are doing in other countries. Same companies working differently in other countries. If they can do it there, they can do it here.
Just to let you know, we do have a healthy amount of time for the MPs to respond. We have until 11:30. So thank you very much, Ken, Carrie Lynn, and then John.
Okay, thank you. A few topics there. At the end of the day, a lot of the talk around housing, of course, is more in the provincial and municipal realm than in federal, because it is provincial jurisdiction housing, and then it is municipalities who deal with zoning. So questions around zoning or rezoning, they're not really federal questions. Having said that, I think it's pretty obvious when this is a national issue and a national problem, when we have very high inflation, which may well go higher, when we have 50% of Canadians saying they don't know how they can make ends meet if they had any change at all, when the pandemic has made job security, some people have weathered it just fine, but there's an awful lot of people out there who've lost their small businesses or who have lost their employment. And these have been extraordinary and difficult times. So what the federal government can do is literally commit more money to the problem. We have not really had federal government involvement in mixed use subsidized housing, frankly, for decades, and that includes liberal and conservative governments. And it seems to me that when you have a very real issue that affects the economy, the mental health, the economic security of virtually every Canadian, then it is incumbent on the national government to start taking more specific steps. And that means investment. And that kind of investment can be, like I suggested, freeing up federal lands for development. It can be more partnering with well, not necessarily directly municipalities, but provinces targeted for municipalities like ours that's growing so much, to find not just land and not just overall investment, but investment particularly for those who are more vulnerable. And that's where you get back to Doug and Ramona's question. We have nonprofits who are well organized, who can run and property manage properties, who know the people in the community who have the most need, and those who, you know, we have a huge problem in Canada with working poor, people who work, but they cannot earn enough, or they're not in the circumstances to afford a better environment, housing environment. it's groups like the one that Doug runs, Unity and others, that actually know who is it in the community to reach out to, who has the need. We also have programs that already exist in the federal government. We could have more for those in the disability community, persons with disabilities. There's a lot of them who are very employable, very intelligent, well educated, but there are barriers to their employment or full employment. So we need an all of government approach on this. We need intergovernmental working relationships and really a dedication. It's about focus. Money is spent all the time by governments at all levels, but it is those who are in government who must decide where the priorities of spending should be. And we can work with nonprofits and for-profits developers to come up with better solutions. We're just not, I think, focusing on this enough, and to just say, oh yeah, we all recognize it's a huge problem and prices are way up and gosh, what do you do? That's really not good enough in my view. And we should be able, all of us here who are members of Parliament, we know people in other levels of government. We know people that we can reach out to and talk to and work with. So I just think there needs to be greater focus so that when it comes to priorities of funding, they make sense for more Canadians. With respect to mortgage funding and all that, I have said to people in government, successive governments, and again, I'll include this as Liberals and Conservative federal governments, that they don't seem to understand in Ottawa the reality of living with a mortgage. Most people here live with mortgages because of the high price of our housing. And the idea, it may be great if you're in northern Saskatchewan that you work hard and you can pay off your home, but that's not so much the reality here in where we live. And when you make mortgages harder to obtain, when you put in mortgage stress tests, which we put in one, then this Liberal government put in another, then they put in another. You start to make it very, very difficult for people to qualify. And I think that has to be looked at. The last mortgage stress test, I would argue, was unnecessary. Or we have to look at better regional emphasis. There's a tendency in Ottawa, and this is a pet peeve of mine, to always come up with one size fits all policies. And the reality of living in Cape Breton or northern Saskatchewan or the lower mainland of BC, they're not the same realities. We live in different work environments, different ethnicity mixes within our communities. We deal with different business acumen. It's just, we have a huge country. We have very few people in it comparatively. And I think federally, we need to do more to develop public policy that fits regionally, not just say, well, this is the way it's going to be for everybody right across the country, because that just doesn't make sense. The last topic I saw that I noted was on industry and digitization. Obviously, this is a big topic, going to be an increasing topic. I saw an interview just in the last couple of days where the banks are talking about us going to more digital identities, ones that can be used cross-government, cross-businesses, cross-services. There's a lot of concern about that, about government basically tracking every Canadian at a higher level than they do now. Balance that against the ease of communication when you can identify people easier. When I was Minister of National Revenue, we had a push on to create one business identity, because what a lot of small businesses find is they're dealing with this side of government and that side of government. They have different numbers, they have different profiles. It gets very confusing. And certainly we were pushing towards having more recognition of one number that can move seamlessly for business through the various federal government departments. But at the end of the day, Stephanie's just putting a comment up here, so I'll speak to that and then end. It is true, we need jobs, we need a robust economy, we need diversity in our economy. And I have no doubt that new Canadians are very stressed upon arrival to find that the job market may not be as robust as they hoped. And we have a lot of people who are already here in Canada who are finding trouble matching the need with the abilities. So we just need to do way more than that. We've been talking about this for decades: better foreign credential recognition, more openness of ways to get education and upgrade. We need trained workforce, and there's lots of jobs out there, but there's also lots of people looking. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go to Randeep next, then John, then Suk.
Thank you, John, by the way. I'm just switching with you because I'm going to have to go off camera and just on audio. So I butted in front of my colleague there. So I'll try to go through as many of the questions as possible. Charn, to your question on skilled workers, look, we're bringing a lot. We've increased immigration to 435,000 this year. The temporary foreign work permit is being increased. My own private member's bill is specifically for that, to help find pathways to citizenship for those skilled workers, specifically in trades, transportation, agriculture, and how to get them to a path of permanent residency in the long run. So that's something we're well in the works. Due to COVID for the last 2 years, unfortunately, due to flight restrictions and COVID restrictions, we weren't able to get as many people traveling to Canada. So that there was a shortfall, and hopefully that is resuming as the travel advisory as of Monday is being lifted. Fees, unfortunately, for those are city fees, and I think you have to raise it with the province and the cities. It should be an election issue. I think the development cost charges are very, very high. I know projects like yours, anywhere from $20 to $40 million are just fees, and they all get passed down to the consumer, which is one of the reasons the cost of housing is high. Step code, again, it's a British Columbia thing. I'm going to have to let you argue with my provincial counterparts and deal with them. Doug, Unity nonprofits, CMHC has several other programs other than the affordable rental construction financing. You should try to see if any of those work. If they don't, I'd love to work with you and sit down with you and figure out where we can tweak those. Our Minister for Housing is very nimble in this and very versatile, so he'd like to hear from you. I've seen a lot of successful ones that have joined with developers where they've taken 30% of the affordable stock for 20 years, as you said, and done that. But perhaps for those that have the land like yourself that have a challenge, I think let's see if we can work out a solution with that. These are sometimes governmental silos that need to be tweaked up a little bit. In terms of, as you said, zoning and the city doing it, again, you're going to have to argue with the city in terms of making sure we have affordable housing and infrastructure in every neighborhood, not just in certain neighborhoods. When it comes to what Mr. Gupta said, look, I just want to let you know, despite high housing prices, despite a very low inventory and massive demand, 45% of all homes that were bought last year were bought by first-time home buyers. Let's not forget that. So 1 out of every 2 houses was bought by a first-time home buyer. 25% were bought by people who are buying their second or third properties. And don't negate them. Me and my colleagues may differ on that. A lot of our rental housing has only been there because people have bought second or third homes because developers were not building apartment buildings. And the only way you can get a clean, decent rental unit was because somebody, actually an investor, bought one and they rented it out to the market. So they've actually helped support the rental market, and that's about 25%. 30% of the rest of the homes were all bought by people who either downgraded or upgraded their homes, sold their home, bought a bigger one, or sold it and bought a small one. So just so you know, that's the that's the way the situation has gone. As far as digitizing, I will say I don't know particularly on individual, but we've invested a lot in digital in the digital supercluster. British Columbia is home to the digital supercluster. We gave 500 million, which was matched, I think, by 2 to 1 by the private sector. And you're more than welcome to join that. It's SMEs and larger companies like Microsoft and Google that are part of it as well, but they're helping digitize everything. And BC is going to become the hub of digital, the digital economy of the future. And we're investing heavily. We just got an update from Sue Page of that yesterday or the day before, I think. And it is the job creation in it is in the thousands. The economic benefit is huge, and it's attracting a lot of companies to come here and actually specialize in that. Pavan, in terms of ALR, I think my colleague said it, there is a provincial process. If the land is not fertile, there's a way to get it out, but it is very onerous. It's very challenging. And I think the provincial government has been announcing some amendments to the ALR and how to make it more versatile for food production, but not just simply farming, but vertical farming as well. That was an announcement lately, but you're going to have to deal with them on that. Zoning recourse, somebody brought that up. I think Ontario has a cool model. It might be worth looking at. They have an appeals court method. So if your zoning allows for it and NIMBYs are trying to stop it and you're actually building something to code, you can actually appeal it at the appeal division. And as long as your project fits that zoning requirement, it gets approved. It might be something to think of. We don't have that in British Columbia, but again, it's provincial and you're going to have to explore it. I don't know too much about it. In my previous incarnation, when I worked in-house for a lending company, I experienced it in Mississauga and other places, and I thought it was actually a good thing. Stephanie, in terms of the salmon farmers, look, I think diversity is going to be very key in this industry. We will be seeing changes from open net fishing to closed pen fishing, and those same jobs I think will come back to British Columbia, back to Surrey. There might be a temporary slippage in that, but the goal is not to end a fishing industry, but to change the way we fish, and I think those will be back. In terms of your comments about jobs, let me just tell you, we have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of Canada, and the history of British Columbia is even lower than the rest of Canada. There's a 1 million job shortage in the 7 years almost that I've been elected. I have almost 3 to 4 employers come every week saying I can't find workers. I've had only 2 people actually come in 7 years, and I'm in a lower economic riding that has said I can't find a job. So I think jobs is not the issue. It's getting people and talent. Tony, your rent to own program, great idea. We're actually, that's part of our housing initiative. We're looking at ideas for that. We've asked real estate boards and housing developers to give us ideas. If you can give me that rent to own program idea, I will convey it. This is one of the options we have is on our manifesto and our party platform to do. Stress tests, I know Carrie Lynn brought that up. We've actually lowered it. We've actually made it nimble. It now fluctuates with the interest rate, so it's not stuck once a year. It actually has been lowered. It was slightly raised just lately, but I haven't seen it actually stall anybody who actually wants to be able to buy a home. And I'm a very big critic of it. I've brought housing experts together on it when it came out in 2018 and 2019. That's it. I would just like to say in 6 years, we've got over 1 million job openings, and we have a robust immigration plan to bring more talent and to upgrade skills of those that are already here by giving more grants and more incentives for those that are wanting to upgrade their skills, particularly women, particularly those from Indigenous communities, and we'll continue doing that so that our market is versatile. And Vancouver, or the global Vancouver, has been considered one of the best cities because we have those trade schools and we have those knowledge-based economies that we are one of the best global attractions for consumers, for employers.
John.
Great, thank you. And thank you for all of the questions. I appreciate Randy going through and Ken as well, the sort of question by question. So there's a couple that I'll deal with specifically, but then my comments will be more in a general sense. I did post a link on the question of digitization, and I don't know if this is exactly what's being looked for, but I would offer it up as just a reminder that MP's offices are here to help people find solutions to their business problems. And so if you have something where you're looking or wondering if the federal government has a role to play, assistance to provide, reach out to your respective member of parliament. And that goes for all of us, government or opposition. And we can help you look to see what government programs may be there. On the digital adoption program, there are two streams. One of them is to grow your business online, and the other is to boost your business technology. And there's a link there to see if either of those fits. So I would say just dig into that using the link that I provided. But if you need more information, reach out to whichever office you fall into, and we can put in inquiries for you or do follow-up for you. Stephanie, I just wanted to say, I hope you didn't take my comments as dismissing the importance of the aquaculture industry to British Columbia. I think that the point is that we're requesting that the sector transition to reduce impacts. And as Ken had said, there are great examples internationally of how these practices are done differently, and they're sustainable, they're environmentally sensitive, and I think that's where we're asking our fish farms to head, so that we can continue to have the jobs within our community. I'm really pleased to hear people talking about the whole housing affordability issue and how we get there. I think that one of the things that I've really appreciated being part of this government is our willingness to deal with something that generally the federal government has not been involved in for several decades. We developed the National Housing Strategy. There are programs that continue to roll out as part of that program. We're currently working right now on rolling out a program that will help municipalities access funding to speed up things like rezoning, to hire planners to do the community plans and plan reviews to really accelerate the speed with which these are being done. We're willing to work with municipalities. BC has actually been a really excellent partner for us, which we have not seen in all of the provinces across the country. And so some of our initiatives are going direct to municipalities to find solutions, and including funding. The announcement that Ken referenced with the BC budget and some of the municipal authorities being taken back at the provincial level, I think we're going to have to look at and follow very closely. But as I say, we've had a great relationship with the BC NDP government, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to find rapid solutions to get affordable housing into our growing community. Carrie Lynn actually touched on the labor issue. I think this is also one of the bottlenecks that we're encountering. And so again, it's working with the provinces, working with sectors. I spent the morning a couple of days ago at the Kwantlen Polytechnic University Cloverdale campus, looking at their trades programs and hearing about people who have been waiting up to 2 years to get into the next level of their Red Seal training. And so when we don't have the certified journeyman workers in their various trades, that slows things down. So how do we actually get those done? There's work being done across a number of sectors on with the provinces, who are generally responsible for looking at credentials. So everything from the medical professions to trades and others. So if we have people who are internationally trained, how do we actually get them up to speed and working at a professional level in Canada quicker? And so those are things that we're involved with. So overall, I would just say, the housing affordability issue, I think we are at a crisis level, not only in the Lower Mainland or not only in Surrey, but in many places across Canada, and our government is responding. I think we need to continue pushing, and with your assistance, we can continue to make that a high priority. I think that in our budget that will be coming out in the next few weeks, we'll see very direct measures to assist with the housing crises that we are experiencing. I also would like to say I've been doing a bit of work in our communities because I represent 3 municipalities, Surrey, Langley Township, and Langley City. The issue of homelessness is also a growing concern. It has impacts, social and economic, within our communities. And our government has committed to working to ending chronic homelessness by 50% within 10 years. And we'd like to do that, get it to zero as soon as we can. I believe that people need a home, but as we see one of the developers I spoke with talked about the trickle-down effect. And so if we don't have the full mix of rental housing, you have people displacing people from one level of housing, the at market, below or subsidized, and then we end up with people on the street. And so I think it was Carrie Lynn who referenced that we need that full mix of housing solutions. And that's where we're here and ready to work with the municipalities in Surrey and through Metro to try to create a greater variety of housing mixes so that we meet those housing needs across the spectrum. I think I'll leave it at that, other than to say, if you have specific questions, if you're in the riding of Cloverdale, Langley City, please give me a call. And we're here to help you access the programs. And if there are not existing programs, but there is a role for the federal government, then we can work on your behalf to try to bring those about so we can keep our growing community being as excellent as it is.
Thank you, John. Suk.
Thank you, Anita. Again, my colleagues have already covered most of the things, but I will be brief in my response, particularly the question that Rick Mann from Isle of Man raised. I can't be too political, but I tell you, we need more transparency and accountability at the city level when it comes to, people stopping projects just or using the political influence to make money. That is where we got to go. On to the other thing, Doug and Ramona, you mentioned about the educating the city. It's a simple math. We should know how many people that are moving every month and how many permits do we need. And all city has to do is basically go to people like Charan and many others that are in this industry, and they will be able to educate much better than us as elected representatives can. And that's where the knowledge lies. Mr. Gupta, excellent question that you raised about these smaller communities, and particularly everyone that is immigrant that's coming in. Either they want to live in Lower Mainland or Greater Toronto area, Calgary, Montreal. So basically, we are shortage of people in small cities as well. If I give you the number right now, today we are 960,000, almost 1 million deficit, when it comes to finding workers. And by 2030, there's going to be 5 million people that's going to retire. There will be 3-to-1 ratio at that point in time. Even with the numbers that we have right now, 432, 452, 457, so on. We would not be able to meet that deficit that we have in the work related field. But as a government, we are still doing everything that we can to bring in as many immigrants we can to sustain the workforce that people talk about. And if there is any particular policy, that you would like to see, I'm for it. We brought in programs in Atlantic Canada. We brought in the programs in rural BC as well to attract more people going that way. But certainly on immigration, I sit on that committee. I keep regular contact with the minister. I'm willing to take that to the minister. Other than that, flipping, Mr. Gupta mentioned, we are already, bringing in a legislation that, people can't flip. Owning one home, we can't control that, but I owned one home in the last 20 years and in the process to build the other one. And I'm certain, that is a free market that we can, but certainly we can bring in incentives to build more homes and give cities the incentives that they can bring in more and more permits and more housing into the market. And that's where I'm gonna leave. And Anita, as you know, I'm open here, accessible to anyone that has particular policy that they want us to carry forward. Again, I want to thank all my colleagues as Kerry Lynn Finley, of course, my own member of parliament, mentioned that we work together as a team, even on the International Trade Committee. When we were working together as one Team Canada, when we were traveling across the globe. And for Surrey, I'm willing to work, with other members of parliament, including Kerry Lynn Finley, and to see if we can achieve better things for people of Surrey.
So just one more question, since we have
Sure.
8 more minutes left. Affordable housing, immigration, jobs, and the economy are all connected. Without an industrial land base to support jobs, none of those focus areas can be successful. What can the federal government do to protect and support industrial lands and improve the management of industrial lands? Do any of the MPs want to respond to that final question? Carrie Lynn.
I had my hand up to actually sort of respond to the last one, but I can include a few remarks on that as well. Again, zoning and then the unique issue we have in BC of protected agricultural lands continue to cause tensions. We do not have enough industrial land here in the lower mainland. Basically, Richmond is saturated, Delta is more or less saturated, and Surrey is a place where people keep looking. The current municipal government certainly has zoned and freed up quite a bit of industrial land. However, there are also tensions between creating industrial land in some places that takes away from agricultural use or is right up against, even across the street from, residential developments. And that's something John Aldag and I have talked about. So, it's not simple, but again, it's about investment from a federal government point of view. If cities and provinces are reaching out saying we need more industrial land, then it's a matter of, okay, where do you find it? Is it being used now for something else? If so, again, all levels of government have to work together to decide whether an industrial use is the best and highest use for that land. One thing about Surrey, unlike a place like the city of Vancouver, there is still room for changing, developing. There is land. It's a matter of how it's allocated. So I think all levels of government recognize that we do not have enough industrial land. Surrey is one of the places where manufacturing actually flourishes and could flourish even more. We have had, again, successive federal governments that have tended to invest in a way that manufacturing is very concentrated in Ontario and Quebec. There is no reason why British Columbia cannot be in the forefront of manufacturing. And I think Surrey is a leader in that. And we can lead by example. And again, that brings better paying, higher paying jobs. With the higher cost of living, with inflation, with, the Conservatives are against, for instance, the CPP tax hike that this Liberal government has brought in, because we just don't think right now people can afford, where it's going to cost $1,000 more for groceries. You can't afford to lose $700 on that. So there needs to be more balance overall in these programs. Thanks.
Ken, and then Randy.
Thanks, Anita. I had a discussion with a Surrey City Councillor the other day who brought up, and this was to Carrie Lynn's comments earlier about federal land that could be available. The focus of the discussion with the councillor was on the piece of property in South Surrey, a rather large piece of federally owned property where I believe the potatoes for hard bite potato chips are currently grown. And there was, there have been a few inquiries about, well, what's going to happen if the federal government decides to dispose of this land? I don't know if this is general with respect to federal government owned land, but that particular piece of property is going to be subject to land claims. And I think that as we look at federal properties, through the lens of reconciliation, et cetera, it may not necessarily be a straight line between the federal government turning over a piece of land to the province or the municipality. I believe we're going to have to obviously accommodate, First Nations interests, all of which says that if there's to be any change, for instance, in the use of that particular piece of land, it's years away at this point.
Randy, final comment?
Sure, thank you. Industrial land is at a premium in Lower Mainland. We have a big shortage. We have a lot of manufacturing jobs that want to come out here. We have almost, I think it's a 0.5% or 2%. It's almost as tight as housing in Lower Mainland, and anything we can do to create more employment-based industrial land is very important. I think we have to be innovative. Vancouver, we're starting to see multi-level warehouses and industrial spaces. So rather than your typical slab on grade with tilt up footprint, they're doing 3 or 4 levels of warehousing and industrial spaces. So those are things I think the government has done, but these are, again, a lot of these are provincial and municipal in scope, and we need to raise that awareness. I've raised that with the provincial counterparts because people wanted to open manufacturing in British Columbia and Lower Mainland and are having a tough time. I will say a lot of our incentives to create more clean tech manufacturing jobs are paying off. A prime example is Damon Motors. They're building an electric motorcycle company right here in Surrey Centre, right here in Surrey at the foot of Patolo Bridge. It's 110,000 square feet, 800 plus jobs. Construction's underway, and I think they're expected to start manufacturing by the end of this year, and the factory itself will be done by the summer. So this is a great way. The incentives we give is 50% reduction in corporate taxes for anything that makes zero emission technologies, and that's incentivized them to set up shop here versus say the US or elsewhere. So I think these things are working, but there needs to be more dialogue and cooperation so that we have that space to create a healthy manufacturing base here in British Columbia.
Thank you, everyone, for this unique opportunity to be able to dialogue with all of you as Surrey MPs, and to all of you, the audience, for providing your questions and comments. We're facing such complex socioeconomic issues of the day. We're all focused on the economy, though, and we want good outcomes for Canadian citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our session today. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you. And remember, Surrey is an opportunity city. Make it a great business day.